He walked into his own store in disguise and found his janitor crying in the back room. What he uncovered next would shock everyone and change the future of the company forever. The city skyline shimmered in the late afternoon sun, glass towers catching the light like fire. Somewhere in the heart of it all, Marcus Carter leaned back in his leather chair, gazing out at the empire he had built. His name was on buildings, contracts, and company papers. His chain of grocery stores stretched across the country, serving thousands of customers daily. By every measure, he was a success story, a man who had risen from nothing to command an empire worth millions. And yet, despite the polished numbers and the glossy reputation, Marcus couldn't shake the question gnawing at him. What was really happening inside his stores when he wasn't there? As CEO, he was shielded by layers of managers, directors, and reports filled with statistics. Customer satisfaction high, sales steady, employee turnover normal. But numbers didn't always tell the truth. He had worked those floors himself once, years ago, and he remembered what it felt like to be overlooked, dismissed, or mistreated by someone who thought they were above you. He had promised himself back then that if he ever made it big, his company would be different. His stores would be safe places where every worker felt valued, from the cashier at the front to the janitor mopping the floors after midnight. But lately, whispers had reached him. Rumors of poor treatment in certain locations, complaints that somehow never reached HR, and managers who were feared rather than respected. That morning, as he sat in his office, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He would find out the truth for himself. Instead of arriving in a chauffeured car with an entourage, Marcus pulled on a pair of worn jeans, an old jacket, and a baseball cap. He trimmed his neatly kept beard into rough stubble and slipped on a pair of reading glasses with cheap frames. When he looked in the mirror, he saw no trace of the polished CEO. Instead, he looked like an ordinary man, just another shopper. The plan was simple. He would visit one of his stores undercover, blending in with the customers. No one would know who he was, and no one would treat him differently because of his position. He wanted to see things exactly as they were. By late afternoon, Marcus pulled his modest rental car into the lot of one of his oldest stores. It wasn't in the richest part of town, but it wasn't the poorest either. This was a place he had opened 15 years ago when his company was still young, and the memories came rushing back as he stepped onto the cracked pavement. The automatic doors whooshed open, and he walked inside. The familiar smell of produce and baked bread hit him immediately, but so did something else, a heavy silence in the air. The customers browsed quietly, heads down, while the employees moved briskly, their faces tense. There was none of the light-hearted chatter, the casual friendliness he remembered from the early days. Marcus moved slowly through the aisles, pretending to browse. He picked up a box of cereal, a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, nothing that would draw attention. All the while, his sharp eyes observed. He noticed a young cashier at the front, nervously tapping her fingers on the counter. She smiled at customers, but the smile never reached her eyes. He noticed two stock boys whispering in the corner, glancing anxiously toward the back room. And he noticed the manager, a tall man in a pressed shirt, pacing with an air of superiority, barking orders that carried more sharpness than encouragement. Marcus's heart sank. This wasn't the atmosphere he had dreamed of when he built the company. He remembered the pride he once felt walking through his stores, seeing employees greet customers warmly, knowing they felt respected. Here, something was wrong. Still, he told himself not to jump to conclusions. He needed more than surface impressions. He needed to listen, to observe, and to find the truth. As he turned into the household goods aisle, he caught sight of something unusual. Near the back, half hidden behind stacked boxes, an elderly man sat hunched over on a bucket. His uniform shirt was faded, his hands rough and calloused from years of labor. A mop rested against the wall beside him. At first, Marcus thought the man was simply resting after a long shift. But then he saw it. The man's shoulders trembling, his hand rising to wipe his face. The janitor was crying. Marcus froze, his chest tightening. This wasn't a sight he ever expected to see in one of his own stores. Quietly, he walked closer, his footsteps soft against the tiled floor. "Sir," Marcus said gently, keeping his voice low so as not to startle him, "are you all right?" The janitor startled anyway, quickly wiping his face with the back of his sleeve. He shook his head, embarrassed. "It's nothing, just a long day." But Marcus had been around long enough to know that tears like that weren't caused by a long day. Something deeper was wrong. He crouched down so he wasn't towering over the man. "I didn't mean to intrude," Marcus said kindly, "but sometimes it helps to talk." The janitor hesitated, his tired eyes scanning Marcus's face as if searching for judgment. Seeing none, his shoulders sagged and his voice cracked as he whispered, "I've worked here over 10 years, and today they treated me like I was worthless." Marcus's fists clenched in his pockets. His disguise was working. This man had no idea who he was talking to. And yet, Marcus had never felt more determined to hear every word. In that quiet corner of the store, the truth was beginning to reveal itself. And Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the air, buzzing faintly above the tiled floors, but Marcus hardly noticed. He was focused entirely on the man sitting before him, the janitor with the weathered hands and trembling shoulders. The man's name tag, faded and scratched from years of use, read Lewis. Lewis's voice broke the silence again, softer this time, as though each word cost him something. "I didn't mean for anyone to see me like this. A man's supposed to hold himself together, right? But some days—" He trailed off and let out a shaky breath. Marcus leaned against the shelf beside him, making sure his body language was open and unthreatening. "You don't have to apologize," he said gently. "Sometimes holding it in is worse." Lewis gave a bitter laugh that sounded more like a sigh. "You sound like my late wife. She always told me crying wasn't weakness, it was just letting go of the weight for a while. But I've been carrying too much lately, and it feels heavier every day." Marcus waited, allowing the silence to stretch comfortably until Lewis continued. The older man rubbed his palms against his knees, staring down at the scuffed floor. "This morning, the store manager pulled me aside. Said I was too slow, that the floors looked streaky after I mopped. Told me if I didn't pick up the pace, he'd cut my hours. Can you imagine? After 10 years of doing this job faithfully, he talks to me like I just started yesterday." His voice cracked. "Like I'm disposable." Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he forced his tone to remain calm. "That must have been hard to hear." Lewis nodded quickly, his throat bobbing as he swallowed. "Hard doesn't even cover it. I've been here longer than most of the staff combined. I trained half the kids who walk these aisles. But the new manager, Collins, he doesn't see any of that. To him, I'm just an old man pushing a mop." His hands began to shake as he went on. "And it's not just the insults. My paycheck's been short 3 times this year. I went to HR, but they said it was a system error. Collins told me not to make a fuss, that if I kept complaining I'd regret it. So I stayed quiet. What choice do I have? Jobs aren't easy to find at my age." Marcus's stomach churned. He had hired people like Collins to support his workers, not to threaten them. He took a slow breath, keeping his cover intact. "What about your family? Do they know what's happening here?" Lewis's face softened at the mention of family. His eyes glistened as he whispered, "It's just me and my granddaughter now. She's 12, smart as a whip, wants to be an engineer. But raising a child on a janitor's wages isn't easy. Some nights I eat less so she can have more. Lately I've been skipping meals altogether." His voice grew hoarse. "When my check came up short last month, I had to choose between paying the power bill or buying her school supplies. She told me she didn't need new notebooks, but I saw her using scraps of paper to finish her homework." The words hit Marcus like a hammer. His company was failing this man who had given it a decade of loyalty. Lewis rubbed at his temples. "I try not to let her see me break down. I tell her everything's fine, that we'll manage. But kids aren't stupid. She heard me on the phone with the bill collectors last week. That's why I came in early today, just to be alone for a while. I didn't want her to see me like this." His shoulders slumped, and for a moment he looked impossibly small in the shadow of the tall shelves. Marcus bent slightly, lowering his voice. "Lewis, you've been carrying a lot on your own, more than anyone should. Has Collins always treated you this way?" The older man let out a dry laugh. "Always from day one. He came in here strutting like he owned the place. Started cutting hours, rewriting schedules, scolding people in front of customers. And if you spoke up, he made sure your life got harder. Everyone's scared of him. That's why no one complains anymore. We all just keep our heads down and hope he doesn't notice us." Marcus scanned the aisle discreetly. A young employee stocking canned goods. Glanced toward them nervously before quickly returning to his work. The tension was written all over the staff now that Marcus looked closer. Lewis sighed. "I shouldn't even be telling you this. If word gets back to him that I was talking, I could lose my job. And then what? At my age, with bills piling up, who's going to hire me? No, better to just swallow the disrespect and survive another day." The words hung in the air, heavy and raw. Marcus felt his disguise weighing on him. He wanted to shout the truth, that he wasn't just some random customer, that he was the man who had built this company from nothing, that he would put an end to Collins's cruelty right now. But revealing himself too soon would ruin his plan. He needed the full picture, not just one man's testimony, no matter how compelling. So instead, he leaned in and spoke carefully. Sometimes the truth has to come out, and sometimes standing up for yourself isn't as dangerous as it feels. What if things could change here? What if someone higher up knew what was happening? Lewis shook his head, his eyes clouded with doubt. "I've been around long enough to know how it works. The higher-ups don't care about folks like me. We're invisible to them. As long as the money flows and the shelves stay stocked, no one looks twice at the janitor crying in the corner." His voice faltered. "You're the first person who's asked if I was okay in years." Marcus swallowed hard, struggling to maintain his cover. "Maybe you're not as invisible as you think," he said softly. For the first time since their conversation began, Lewis looked up and held Marcus's gaze. There was something fragile yet fierce in his expression, like a man who wanted desperately to believe but had been disappointed too many times. He whispered, "I just want to be treated with respect. I don't need praise or big rewards. I just want to do my job, go home, and know I've earned an honest day's pay without being humiliated." Is that too much to ask? Marcus felt something shift inside him, a mix of fury and responsibility. No, it wasn't too much to ask. In fact, it was the bare minimum any human being deserved. The overhead speakers crackled with an announcement. "Manager Collins, please report to the front desk." Lewis flinched at the sound, his entire body tightening as though bracing for impact. Marcus placed a steady hand on his shoulder, a small gesture of reassurance. "Thank you for trusting me," he said quietly. "I know that wasn't easy." Lewis nodded, quickly wiping at his eyes again. "Don't mention this to anyone," he muttered. "I can't risk it." Marcus offered a faint smile, though inside he was already making plans. "Your secret is safe with me." As he walked away, leaving Lewis to compose himself, Marcus's mind raced. The truth he had just heard was worse than anything he had imagined when he set out that morning. It wasn't just one bad day. It wasn't just a cranky manager. It was a culture of fear, a pattern of exploitation, and a betrayal of everything his company was supposed to stand for. He pushed his cart down the next aisle, outwardly calm, but inside a storm was brewing. He would dig deeper, uncover every hidden cruelty, and make sure justice came swiftly. Collins had no idea the man he was oppressing was under the watchful eye of the very person who could destroy him, and Marcus intended to do exactly that. Marcus moved deeper into the store, pushing the cart slowly so he wouldn't draw attention. His disguise as a regular customer still held, but his eyes were sharper now, catching details he had overlooked before. He noticed how employees avoided Collins when he walked past, shoulders stiff, eyes lowered, moving quickly to appear busy. The atmosphere wasn't the easy rhythm of a healthy workplace. It was the rhythm of fear. Marcus stopped at the produce section, pretending to examine apples. Collins's voice carried across the floor, sharp and cold. "If you can't stack those boxes properly, then maybe you don't need this job." His words cut through the hum of customers chatting and carts squeaking. A young cashier, no older than 19, fumbled nervously with a display of oranges. I'll fix it, sir," she stammered. Collins sneered, his tone dripping with disdain. "Do it faster. We don't pay you to stand around looking lost." Marcus clenched his jaw. He had promised himself he would observe before acting, but every instinct in him wanted to step forward, reveal his identity, and put an end to the humiliation. Still, patience was crucial. He needed proof, evidence that Collins was more than just a mean manager having a bad day. He approached the young cashier once Collins stormed off. "Excuse me," Marcus said kindly, keeping his tone casual. "Do you happen to know where the bottled water is?" The girl pointed down an aisle, but her hand trembled. Her eyes flicked nervously in the direction Collins had gone. Marcus gave her a warm smile. "Thank you," he said. "And for what it's worth, you're doing a great job with that display. Those boxes don't look easy to handle." Her lips curved into the smallest smile before she quickly returned to her work. It was a fleeting moment, but Marcus filed it away. People here were beaten down, but they still wanted kindness. They were starving for it. As he walked away, he overheard two employees whispering near the stockroom door. Marcus slowed his pace, lingering just close enough to catch fragments. "He cut my hours again," one voice said bitterly. "I can't even cover rent this month." The second replied, "I know. He told me if I wanted more hours, I'd have to work through my breaks. Said if I complain, he'll just find someone else. There's always another kid looking for a job." Marcus's stomach twisted. These weren't isolated complaints, they were patterns. Collins wasn't just harsh, he was exploiting his power. He decided to follow his instincts and head toward the back of the store. Near the employee-only door, he spotted Collins, standing with a clipboard, scolding another worker. Marcus positioned himself behind a tall shelf, pretending to read a cereal box while he listened. "You think this is a charity?" Collins snapped at the worker. "I told you to clock out before finishing that last delivery. We don't pay overtime here." The worker shifted uncomfortably. "But I was still unloading the truck." Collins cut him off. "Then you should have worked faster. If I see another extra minute on your time card, you'll regret it. Understand?" The worker nodded, shoulders slumped, and shuffled away. Marcus's blood boiled. Making employees work off the clock wasn't just cruel, it was illegal. Collins was cutting corners, saving money by stealing labor. And Marcus knew exactly how dangerous that could be for the company if regulators found out. He pushed his cart to a quieter aisle, pulled out his phone discreetly, and pretended to check a shopping list. Instead, he opened the camera and zoomed in on Collins, who was barking orders at another employee. Marcus hit record, capturing the aggressive tone and body language. He didn't want to humiliate anyone on video, but this evidence could not be ignored. As he continued recording, he noticed Collins slip a small envelope from his pocket and hand it to a delivery driver. The driver nodded, shoved it into his jacket, and quickly left. Marcus's mind raced. Kickbacks, bribes, or maybe hush money? Whatever it was, it reeked of corruption. He turned off the camera and made a mental note: investigate further. Just then, Marcus spotted Lewis again, pushing a mop near the restrooms. Collins strode up to him, voice loud enough for customers nearby to hear. "Lewis, you missed a spot over there. Do I need to spell it out for you every time?" Lewis tightened his grip on the mop handle, his lips pressed into a thin line. He muttered, "I'll take care of it." Collins leaned in closer, smirking. "That's what I thought. Don't forget, you're lucky to even be here." The humiliation was deliberate, a performance meant to remind everyone who held the power. Marcus's hands curled into fists at his sides. He had seen enough for one day, but he wasn't finished gathering information. Later, Marcus headed to the customer service counter, where a middle-aged woman was assisting shoppers with returns. She wore a polite smile, but her eyes were tired. Marcus approached with an empty basket. "Excuse me, I had a question," he said softly. She looked up. "Of course, how can I help?" Marcus lowered his voice. I couldn't help noticing. The manager here seems a little strict. He chose his words carefully. Has it always been this way? The woman's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She glanced around to make sure Collins wasn't nearby before leaning closer. You didn't hear this from me, but he makes life miserable for everyone. If he doesn't like you, you'll lose hours or worse. We've had good people quit because of him, but nobody dares report it. Why not? Marcus asked gently. Because the last time someone tried, Collins said he had friends in corporate. The person's schedule got cut so badly, they had no choice but to leave. Her eyes flicked nervously again. Please don't repeat what I said. I need this job. Marcus nodded. Of course. Thank you. As he left the counter, he knew the truth was undeniable now. Collins wasn't just a bad manager. He was a tyrant who thrived on fear. His store had become a place where loyalty and hard work were punished instead of rewarded. Marcus took one last lap around the aisles, absorbing everything. The hollow eyes of employees, the forced smiles, the tense atmosphere. Customers might not notice the cracks, but he could. And he knew it was his responsibility to fix them. At the exit, Marcus paused. The automatic doors slid open, letting in a gust of evening air. He glanced back at the store one more time, watching Collins laugh at something on his phone while employees scurried past him. The truth was worse than Marcus had expected when he first walked in that morning. Lewis's tears were just the surface of a deeper, poisonous culture, and Collins was at the center of it all. Marcus stepped into the night, determination burning in his chest. Tomorrow, he would come back not as an undercover customer, but as the man with the power to change everything. And when he revealed who he really was, Collins's reign of intimidation would collapse in an instant. But for now, he let the secret remain. The storm was gathering, and Collins wouldn't see it coming. The following morning, Marcus rose earlier than usual. The city outside his hotel window was still half asleep, streetlights flickering against the dim glow of dawn. He poured himself a cup of coffee, but the bitter taste hardly registered on his tongue. His mind was already at the store, already preparing for what had to come next. The decision to reveal himself was not one he took lightly. He had spent years building his company on values of dignity and fairness. The store he had walked into yesterday bore little resemblance to those ideals. Collins had turned it into a kingdom of fear, where workers hid their pain behind forced smiles. Marcus could not allow that to continue. He dressed not in disguise this time, but in the tailored suit he reserved for board meetings and press events. His polished shoes gleamed, his tie was precise, and every line of his appearance radiated authority. Today, there would be no doubt about who he was. Today, the mask came off. By the time Marcus arrived at the store, the parking lot was filling with early customers. He walked with measured steps, his presence commanding but calm. Employees at the entrance greeted him with the usual rehearsed courtesy, not recognizing him yet. That would change soon enough. Inside, Collins was already striding across the floor, barking instructions. His voice echoed off the shelves. Move those boxes faster. And you, don't just stand there, greet the customers with a smile. Do I have to teach you everything? Marcus headed straight toward the front, drawing the attention of employees as he moved. His suit, his posture, his steady gaze, everything about him seemed out of place in the ordinary bustle of the store. Murmurs began to ripple through the staff. When Collins spotted him, he raised an eyebrow, his expression caught between annoyance and forced charm. "Good morning, sir," Collins said, approaching quickly. "Can I help you find something? We like to give our premium customers extra attention." His tone was slick, artificial. Marcus studied him, then spoke clearly enough for the surrounding employees to hear. "Actually, I'm here to find something." "The truth," Collins' smile faltered. I'm not sure what you mean." Marcus didn't break eye contact. "You will. But first, gather your staff. All of them. Right here." Confusion spread across Collins's face. "Excuse me? Who do you think you are to—" Marcus raised a hand, his voice dropping into the calm, firm authority of a leader who was used to being obeyed. "Do it now." The weight in his tone left no room for argument. Collins hesitated, glanced around at the employees who were now staring openly, and finally muttered something under his breath before clapping his hands. "All right, everybody, front and center, quick." The workers assembled slowly, exchanging wary glances. Lewis shuffled in from the back, mop still in hand, his eyes red from another sleepless night. The young cashier stood near the edge of the group, her shoulders tense. They didn't know what was happening, but they sensed it was important. Once everyone was gathered, Marcus stepped forward. "My name is Marcus Grant," he began, his voice carrying across the store. "I'm not just a customer. I'm the founder and CEO of this company." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Collins's face drained of color. Marcus continued, his gaze sweeping across the staff. "Yesterday I came here in disguise to see how things were running. What I found left me shocked and deeply disappointed. This store, our store, was not a place of respect, teamwork, and integrity. It was a place of fear. I heard threats. I saw intimidation. I witnessed loyal employees humiliated in front of customers. And that is unacceptable." The workers exchanged glances, whispers breaking out among them. For the first time in years, hope flickered in their eyes. Marcus turned to Collins, his expression hardening. "You," he said, his voice sharp as steel, "you are the one responsible for this." Collins straightened his tie nervously, trying to recover his confidence. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. These employees exaggerate. They're lazy, they need discipline, and if I push them, it's for the good of the store." "Discipline," Marcus repeated, his voice rising. "Is that what you call withholding pay? Forcing people to work off the clock? Cutting hours as punishment? Threatening those who dare to speak up?" Collins's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice, though everyone could still hear. "Yesterday I saw you demean Lewis, one of our most loyal employees, after 10 years of service. I saw you terrify young workers who are just starting their lives, and I saw you hand an envelope to a delivery driver. Should I go on?" Collins swallowed hard, his composure crumbling. It's not what it looked like." Marcus shook his head. "No excuses. You have betrayed this company's values and the people who keep it alive." He looked around at the employees. "The truth is, Collins never had the authority he claimed. I built this business from the ground up to give people jobs they could be proud of. And I will never allow one man's greed and cruelty to destroy that." The silence in the store was absolute. Every eye was fixed on Marcus, every breath held. Then slowly Lewis stepped forward. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice carried with quiet strength. "Thank you, sir, for seeing us, for hearing us." Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. "No one should ever have to beg for dignity. Not in my company, not anywhere." He turned back to Collins, his decision final. "As of this moment, you are terminated. Security will escort you out." Collins's face turned red with rage. "You can't do this. I've made this store profitable." Marcus cut him off, his tone icy. "You've made it toxic, and no profit is worth poisoning people's lives. Get out." Two security staff who had been standing near the entrance stepped forward. Collins sputtered, throwing desperate looks at the crowd, but no one moved to defend him. The same employees he had bullied and belittled now watched in silence as he was led out of the building, his protests fading into the distance. When the doors closed behind him, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Shoulders that had been hunched in fear now lifted. A ripple of relief spread through the group. Marcus faced them again. "I know trust isn't built in a day, and I know Collins's actions have left scars, but I promise you this, things will change. This store will be a place where hard work is rewarded, where respect is the foundation, and where no one has to fear coming to work." The young cashier raised her hand timidly. "Does that mean we can take our breaks again?" Marcus's heart ached at the innocence of the question. "Yes," he said firmly. "You will have every right you are entitled to and more, starting today." The employees exchanged looks of cautious joy. Lewis wiped at his eyes, but this time it wasn't from despair. "I never thought I'd see the day," he whispered. Marcus smiled at him warmly. "This is just the beginning. You and every person here deserve to feel valued. And I will personally make sure that happens." Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then louder, swelling into something powerful. It wasn't just for Marcus. It was for themselves. For the moment, they finally felt seen and heard. Marcus let the sound wash over him, knowing the fight wasn't over. Rebuilding trust would take time, but he had taken the first step, and the employees had taken it with him. As the clapping faded, Marcus spoke one last time. "Let's make this store what it was always meant to be, a place of pride, together." The employees nodded, some smiling through tears. Hope, fragile but real, had returned. Outside, Collins stood in the parking lot, shouting into his phone, his voice a storm of anger and desperation. But inside, the storm had passed. The store had found its calm and its future, and Marcus knew the real work, the healing, the rebuilding, was about to begin. The store was quieter than it had been in weeks, not in the sense of emptiness, but in the sense of peace. The constant bark of Collins's voice, the hurried shuffle of workers fearful of making mistakes, the tension that seemed to hang like a storm cloud, all of it was gone. For the first time in years, employees moved through the aisles without flinching at every sound. It was subtle, but Marcus noticed it right away. The following morning he arrived again, not to confront but to rebuild. He walked through the automatic doors and paused, watching the staff greet early customers with genuine smiles. They weren't perfect smiles, the kind plastered on by fear, but small, hesitant ones born from relief. Lewis was by the cleaning supply aisle, humming quietly as he pushed his mop. His shoulders, once bent under invisible weight, seemed lighter. When he noticed Marcus, he froze for a second, then offered a nod, one that carried respect, gratitude, and cautious trust. Marcus nodded back, a silent promise passing between them. Marcus gathered the employees in the break room, a place that had once been avoided because it was where Collins often cornered workers with threats. Today, the mood was different. The employees entered slowly, curious, some still skeptical. They filled the chairs, leaned against walls, and waited for him to speak. He stood at the front, jacket off, sleeves rolled. "I won't keep you long," he began, "but I owe you something more than yesterday's confrontation. I owe you a vision for where we go from here." He paused, letting his words sink in. What happened in this store, what Collins did, was not just a failure of one man. It was a failure of leadership. My leadership? I trusted the wrong person. I stepped back when I should have been closer, and you paid the price. For that I'm truly sorry. The room was silent. A few workers exchanged looks, surprised at the humility in his words. Leaders didn't usually admit mistakes. Not in their world, Marcus continued, his tone steady. But apologies mean nothing without change. So here's what's going to happen. First, your hours will be respected. No more unpaid overtime. No more cut shifts as punishment. Second, I'm bringing in an anonymous reporting system, so if anyone, manager, assistant, even myself, mistreats you, it will be heard. And third, I want to invest in you. Training, opportunities, promotions. This store will not just be a place you survive in, it will be a place you grow. A murmur of approval ran through the group. The young cashier, the same one who had asked about breaks yesterday, raised her hand timidly. Does that mean we can actually ask for time off without being scared? Marcus smiled gently. Yes, time off is your right, and I want you to take it without fear. Work should never make you feel like you're trapped. The cashier's face lit with relief, and she whispered to her friend, who grinned back. Lewis cleared his throat. Sir, I don't mean to overstep, but words like these. We've heard promises before. Not from you, but from others. How do we know it'll stick? Marcus nodded. It was a fair question. By what I do next, he said simply. Not what I say, he outlined his plan. Starting today, he would spend 2 weeks working alongside them, not as CEO, but as a colleague. Stocking shelves, bagging groceries, cleaning floors. "I can't fix what I don't understand," he explained. "And I won't understand until I stand where you stand." The reaction was immediate. Some employees gasped. Others laughed nervously, unsure if he was serious. Lewis's eyes widened with cautious respect. "You mean you'd mop floors with me?" Lewis asked. Marcus smiled. "If you'll let me." The next days were unlike anything the store had seen. Marcus traded his suit for a store uniform and name tag. Customers who recognized him from business articles did double takes when they saw him pushing carts in the parking lot or stacking cereal boxes in aisle 5. At first, employees watched him with skepticism, but as the hours passed, their walls began to crumble. They saw him sweat, struggle, and even laugh when a stack of soup cans toppled onto his shoes. He asked questions, not as a boss checking up, but as a student eager to learn. "What's the hardest part of your day? What slows you down the most? What would make your job easier?" For the first time, they spoke freely. The young cashier explained how the outdated registers often froze, forcing her to face angry customers without support. The stock clerk showed him how poor scheduling left only one person to handle deliveries meant for 3. Lewis revealed that the cleaning equipment was so worn, it made simple tasks 10 times harder. Marcus listened, taking notes. Every complaint became part of a plan. He ordered new equipment, updated technology, and adjusted staffing schedules. Slowly, the cracks in the store's foundation began to close. But the transformation wasn't just in operations, it was in spirit. Employees began to feel seen. The cashier's smile grew wider. The stock clerk whistled as he worked. And Lewis, once a silent shadow, became a voice others turned to for guidance. One afternoon, Marcus joined Lewis in the back to scrub floors. As they worked, Lewis spoke softly. "You know, sir, I used to love this job. 10 years ago, I'd come in proud to wear the uniform. But then things changed. Collins made me feel like I was nothing, just a mop in my hand. Yesterday, when you stood up for me, I felt human again." Marcus stopped scrubbing, meeting his eyes. "You are human, Lewis, and more than that, you're the backbone of this place. Without people like you, this company doesn't exist. Don't ever let anyone make you forget that." Lewis blinked rapidly, then nodded. His eyes glistened, but this time it wasn't from despair. By the end of the 2 weeks, the store had changed completely. Customers noticed it first. They commented on the friendlier service, the quicker lines, the atmosphere that felt welcoming instead of heavy. Sales increased, not because of Collins' pressure, but because employees actually cared again. One evening, Marcus called another meeting. The staff gathered, curious. He stood before them, not as the undercover stranger they once knew, nor just as their CEO, but as someone who had shared their sweat and struggles. "I came here undercover to see the truth," he began. "What I found broke my heart. But what I've seen since has given me hope. You've reminded me why I started this company. Not for profit, but for people. And together, we've proved that respect and success can go hand in hand." He announced new policies, fair wages, clear promotion paths, and mental health resources. The employees erupted in applause, louder than before, not hesitant but full of belief. Then Marcus added something unexpected. "I've decided that this store will be our model. What we build here, this culture, this spirit, we will spread to every branch across the country. This store will not just be a place where change happened. It will be where change began." The room buzzed with energy. Employees exchanged excited looks, realizing their struggles had sparked something bigger than themselves. Lewis stepped forward, voice steady. "Sir, we won't let you down." Marcus smiled warmly. "It's not about not letting me down. It's about never letting yourselves down again." The room fell silent, then erupted once more into cheers. That night, as Marcus left the store, he paused outside, looking back through the glass doors. Inside, he saw employees laughing, cleaning up together, helping one another without fear. For the first time, the store didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a community. He thought of the janitor's tears that had started it all, the quiet pain that had revealed a broken truth. Those tears had not been in vain. They had sparked a storm that washed away corruption and planted seeds of hope. And Marcus knew this was more than a victory for one store. It was a message for every worker who had ever felt small, every leader who had ever forgotten what leadership meant. Dignity was not negotiable, respect was not optional, and true success was never built on fear. As he drove away, the city lights glowing in the distance, Marcus felt something he hadn't in years: pride. Not the kind found in profits or headlines, but the kind found in people, ordinary people who, when given the chance, could transform a store, a company, and perhaps even the world. The story wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. One undercover visit exposed the truth and turned a store built on fear into a place of hope. But this is only one story. Every worker deserves respect, and every leader must remember why people matter most. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful true stories that inspire change. Your support helps us bring more voices to light, and together we can make a difference.